Today's AskReddit post. Serious, what is the story of your worst date? Oh boy, this is gonna be a good one. Let's get started. From the get-go, talking to her was honestly like talking to a ducking brick wall. If I asked her a question, her reply was typically one word or at most a single sentence, and no questions in return or any efforts to keep the conversation going. At one point, she got up to go to the toilet, and the older woman who was sitting at the table next to us leaned over and whispered to me, "I have to say, I really admire your patience. She is a nightmare." That's hilarious. I love that lady. Should have just started talking to the older woman instead. Removed. He stuck his fingers in my dessert, licked his fingers and did it again. I ordered a lemon meringue pie and offered him to some. He said no, only to then proceed to say, "Actually that looks good," and sticks his fingers in for a taste. Yuck. That's disgusting. I had been seeing this guy for a few months, but he kept me on the down low, didn't want to commit. Finally took me out to dinner in public. We sat at the bar. A little after we ordered, his two friends got to the bar and he immediately got up before they spotted us. He went over to them and sat and ate dinner with them and texted me not to come over. So I sat alone for most of the night until his friends left. He was married. I had the exact same thought. Nothing else makes sense. Well, isn't that just another level of horrible? But let me guess, this isn't uncommon. So it's not my date, because my bad dates are just boringly regular stuff. But working in bars and restaurants, I've been able to witness some absolute doozies. And boy does this one take the cake. So, it's a fairly quiet night and it's pretty early, and I have a reservation for 6 PM for 2 people. Young guy shows up for that reservation about 10 minutes early, tells me he's very nervous, as he's on a first date, and hasn't been on many of them. All that kind of jazz. Kinda sweet really. Anyways, I seat him, and the girl arrives, like, 30 minutes late. She then proceeds to get extremely drunk. About halfway through the meal, though, she answers her phone, takes the call, and starts talking about her date, in front of her date, saying stuff like he's not really my type. I don't exactly like him, but I figured I had nothing else planned tonight, so why not? Young man looks super discouraged, pays his bill, and leaves. He's a nice lad. I've seen him a few times at the bar I work at now. Fuck that chick. I would have just walked out and left her the tab. Went out with guy from work who I didn't know much about. He turned out to be a dick in many ways and was drunk when I showed up. Lowlight of the night was when he started ouchly heckling the small cover band that was playing in the bar. The guy on the mic said, "I'll give you $10 out of my own pocket if you can tell me this girl's name," and you guessed it. He literally blanked on my name in front of a room full of people. Edit. Forgot the kicker. The next day he texted me saying, "You can try again." As if I was the one who blew it. You can try again. LMAO, he didn't have much but the audacity. I got a girl's number and went to the dentist a few days later. 4 wisdom teeth and a lot of drugs later. I apparently showed the dentist her number as my emergency pickup. I have no memory of these events, but apparently she picked me up, took me to the pharmacy for my medication, and dropped me off at my apartment, where I passed out. That was our first and only date. Apparently I didn't make a good impression. Can't blame her for that. I have no idea why the dentist office asked drugged up me for a pickup number. I assume they couldn't reach my primary help number, but I never asked. That's a sweet woman though. I hope you at least asked her where you could send flowers. Face with tears of joy. That was super nice of her, lol. I haven't had many dates, but the last one I went on asked me if I could still have children. Yes, I can still have children. Am I going to have any more children? Number. But you still can though, right? Left early and blocked his number. That's weird and makes me super uncomfortable. Met online back in 2003. Agreed to meet at a diner we both knew. I got there first. She arrived. Hit the gas instead of the brake. Drove into the curb. Then hit a light pole which fell over and landed on a parked van. No one got hurt but she was pretty embarrassed. Never heard back from her. Removed. Haven't had many dates but the worst funniest was from Tinder. Shock. The plan was to start at my house as a double date, then if it went well split up and go out. It never got to the last part because he shit in my toilet. Blocked it with toilet roll. Got embarrassed when my friend went in and left. Oh, and he forgot his jacket in the rush, so got one of his friends to come and get it the next day. I had a guy show up to a second date at my house with his dog. Dog walks in, takes a huge shit in the middle of my kitchen floor within 10 seconds of walking in. A bunch of friends were there. Everyone laughed but him. We were both broke, so we went walking around this cute, teeny tiny country town near us, and then got McDonald's to eat in the car so we could chat some more. He almost immediately starts pressuring me for sex because he bought me a cheeseburger, so I owe him, he says. He starts getting pushy, and I say, okay, but let's go get some condoms from this gas station that's on the other of town. I drove for this date, so I take us to the gas station and tell him to go get the condoms while I wait. I wait for him to get in the door and go a bit farther into the store before I drive off, leaving him stranded in this tiny gas station in the days before cell phones got popular, in a tiny country town with no bus service, no ride shares, and everything shuts down by 6 PM. I know from mutual friends he made it home, but they already knew why he'd been ditched at the gas station, so no one cared about his shitty whining about it. Please accept this poor woman's gold sports medal. I freaking love this story. My freshman year of undergrad, my TAFE for a Comp C class I was taking asked me on a date. He seemed normal, nice enough, so I agreed and we went to dinner at a random restaurant in the city. He ordered for me, which was not my favorite, but I was like whatever cause he seemed to know the place really well. He was a narcissistic weirdo and he talked about himself the entire time and kept asking me, telling me to pay attention. He told me all about his ex-fiancée and basically went on a rant about how white women are so entitled, so now he's only interested in black queens. It was making my skin crawl. I felt physically ill. At the end I wanted to split the bill he said he would pay since I'd be paying him later, wink wink. I didn't even know what to say, or do I just stared at him and excused myself to go to the bathroom, and I left through a side door. Luckily there was only 2 weeks left in the semester, so I only saw him again for the final. Edit. TAE means teaching assistant. My university allowed upperclassmen to TAE in intro classes. This guy was a senior but unbeknownst to me was actually 27 cause army. Yes, he was white. I'm a dude and I see these posts where we are so ducking creepy. Like WTF. Why did most of our brains stop maturing at the age of 13? Interestingly, our brains don't finish developing till mid-20s. For some of these nutters, there may still be hope, and some people just take movie tropes far too seriously. Two that come to mind. Guy who got me lingerie as a gift on the first date. Like really nice lingerie. Still really creepy too. The guy who brought his kids to our first date. I didn't even know he had kids. Wait, did you accept the lingerie? Yeah, of course. It was already awkward enough. Removed. Started off as a date and ended up a MLM pitch. Equals. On the plus side, I still have those Cutco scissors and they are decent. Don't know if it was my worst, but met up with a gal at a hotel bar for a first date and she ushers me into a meeting room for a MLM pitch. Several other losers in there just like me. I thought she was just a dumpy 40 years old single mom, but no, an MLM pimp. At that point you just gotta laugh and say no way, Jose, I'm not stupid enough to fall for this shit right in front of all the other fellas that got duped. Flip down sunglasses and walk off into the sunset. More like look embarrassed and limp off like a dog that's been hit on the hind legs by a car. He seemed like a lightweight drunk. Jumped from story to story about the band Fish and Fossils. Kept getting spacey and wide-eyed at shadows. At the end he admitted he was microdosing and maybe took too much. The twist was when the person who liked fish turned out to be on drugs. Yeah, didn't see that one coming at all. Met a guy at a professional night out. He seemed interesting. He invited me out for Chinese food and a movie, but insisted I come by his house first to meet his 4 dogs, because not liking his dogs would be a deal breaker. Cool, I love dogs. I follow directions to his house, which is a mobile home with a small fenced yard, so the dogs must be little, I think. Number 4 large, mannerless dogs living inside this mobile home, and the smell is completely encompassing. Turns out dinner and a movie meant watching one of the thousands of VHS tapes and DVDs he owned while he tried to get the clothes off me, while 4 big dogs bounced around. I declined his kind offer of incredible sex and got out of there. My clothes went directly in the washer and my car smelled like dog for days. How did he hide all the fur from his clothes during that night out? He said he was taking me out to dinner. He took me to a homeless shelter to eat. I felt so guilty. I'm not comfortable with this. Him. I don't give a buck. Literally. He crossed his legs and I could see he was wearing an ankle monitor. REDFLG. Number. It was an ankle monitor. Went to Buffalo Wild Wings because he wanted to watch the MMA fight. Got there. Casual conversation. But he kept looking at his BlackBerry and heaving these overly dramatic sighs. Finally asked what was wrong and he said, I didn't want to bring it up but my ex-fiancée was killed in a plane crash today. Cue up the OMG. So sorry with a bit of skepticism. Fight finished. He got our separate checks and then said he'd walk me to my car. Get there and he says, so, you coming over to make me feel better or what? No. Sorry. Hard pass on the sympathy sex. Quick Google search upon arriving home revealed no plane crashes anywhere that day, which isn't to say there wasn't one, but I would put a lot of money on there probably wasn't one. He texted me the next day to say he had a good time but it was a shame I was such a buzzkill. Upside down face. Row. Just wow. Don't have words for this. He went in for a kiss and he proceeded to ram his tongue in and out of my mouth, leaving his saliva all over the lower part of my face. I was mortified and tried to play it off as to not make him feel bad. That was by far the worst kiss I've ever gotten. I still get second-hand embarrassment when I think about it. He lied about his age by 10 years and took me to a part of the city that had his art murals. Was disappointed I wasn't impressed and called me a selfish bitch for choosing my own cocktail at the bar. As a biological woman, this was the first time that I'd ever gotten a date with a girl. We were going to go out to lunch together and get to know each other. I spent all morning as a bundle of nerves trying to be super pretty for the date. I don't usually dress up at all. We met up at the restaurant and she pulls out her Bible and starts talking to me about how homosexuality is a sin and she can save my soul. Oh no, you got flirty fished. As a cishet man, I had 2 women do this to me about a month apart. Turns out they went to the same church. Fishers of men, I guess. Flirty fishing was an actual published strategy used by a cult. I think it was Children of God. I had been texting this girl and she was really digging me. I was in school for accounting and she loved that. Apparently she was tired of all these artsy guys. So we go on a date. Her family works in high finance in Singapore and is really well off. I'm asking her about competition with Hong Kong, SK, and Taiwan. She tells me a little but then asks me about the industrialization of India and if I had seen any changes. I've never been, so I tell her I didn't know. At this point she is confused and asks me why I've never been to my homeland. I tell her I'm American and my parents are Mexican. Her eyes got so wide. She suddenly gets super awkward and says I'm lying. She wants me to prove it, so I show her my ID that shows I have a Spanish last name. She gets super uncomfortable and tells me to take her home. I'm like WTF. So I take her home and she is visibly scared. Longest 20-minute drive of my life. I drop her off and that was the last I ever heard of her. TLDR. Went on a date with a chick who thought I was Indian and was scared of Hispanic people. It might have actually been the American part. You know how those types of people can get about Americans. Now that I think about it, might have been both. Duck her anyways, lol. Edit. By those people I meant rich people from literally any other country. I don't think he should duck her tbh. I met this guy at a coffee place. He was nice and we met for coffee once more and then met for dinner at a bar. The dude straight up licked my face. We were sitting at the bar and I had turned to get the bartender's attention and he leaned over and licked me chin to temple. I was visibly shook, so he tried to playfully poke me to tone my what the duck face down and I asked him to stop. He then leaned in and whispered, "I'll just poke your sleeping body later." I made him leave. I walked him to his car and had a bouncer stand by the door and wait for watch me. I received several messages a few days later. He was concerned he hadn't heard from me and was going to stop by my parents later to see if I was okay. I never took him to spoke to him about my parents' house address. I told him I would call the police if I ever heard from him or saw him again. Thankfully, I never heard from him again. JFC, you did the right thing. Got a friend call bailout one time. Girl had to go to the bathroom right in the middle of it so I knew it was coming. Kept talking once she got back for a few minutes. Her story was rather impressive though. She didn't stick with the "my friend needs help." She told me that a bus crashed and she had to get back to the hospital because there were multiple dead kids. That was interesting. Removed. He did ketamine in my bathroom. Sat his bare post-sex ass on my sofa and told me he could imagine himself living here, as well as telling me all about his ex-girlfriend and her criminal family. Never again Tinder. I went on a dinner date with a guy from old. He takes me to a tapas restaurant and proceeds to chug 3 drinks in a matter of 15 minutes. The waiter asks if I want to see a menu and he tells them no. So apparently dinner is not happening. This guy sucks and he keeps randomly interrupting me to tell me where he buys his clothes. So I excuse myself to use the bathroom and the wait staff pulls me aside and asked me if I needed help because it was looking bad. They said they will tell him I left and to stay in the kitchen watching Alien vs Predator until he leaves. I waited 10 minutes until he left and I went to Wendy's for a spicy chicken sandwich. Well, that actually ended well. Met a nice girl online. Turned out she worked at the state crime lab. She spent all of dinner telling me the in and outs of processing rape kits. Actually, I would find this very interesting and sounds like something I would do on a date. Grimacing face. I was actually just thinking that I would probably be super into that. But I also work in medicine. I always find it so cool and interesting that what makes one set if people not work well together is awesome to another person. I've shared this before, but one time I was out on a first date with this girl I met online. I thought she was very attractive and we seemed to hit off well through texts. We're at this bar and she suggests we play a people watching game where we try to make up backstories for the other people there. I thought it sounded fun, especially since I played a similar game with friends on the train sometimes. Plus it felt like a good icebreaker to get us talking. Well, she managed to take all the fun out the game by being ridiculously cruel in all her assumptions for no real reason at all. It felt like she was projecting issues she had onto these people. Like one guy was sitting at the bar alone. Could have been waiting for someone. You never know. But because he was alone, he was a ducking loser with no friends that hates his life. Completely killed the mood and I lost interest in her after that. Couldn't see myself going on a second date with someone like that. I remember you posting this. Still turns me off her. I was 19 and met this guy online through a kink site. We talked off and on as friends for months and I thought it was strange that he never shared a pic, but it wasn't a big deal. We agreed to meet and he was perfect. We matched on every level except that he was big. And I know this sounds bad, but I'm talking about over 500 pounds. He had a hard time walking and I just wasn't attracted to him. He told me that he didn't have a medical condition. Yes, I asked and why I was an asshole. He was just big and had no intention of changing. After the date I went home and cried. He was perfect and I said no because I just couldn't do it. I tried to keep being his friend but he wasn't interested. It was awful. Regardless of what people say, you are not a monster for not being physically attracted to someone because of their weight. I'm a big believer in personality over looks. But Even I understand that physical attraction plays a big part in the process. And to be honest, £500? That's a ducking lot. And if he has no desire to change, that isn't going to be a good thing in the long run. Hell, you mentioned he had trouble walking already. Anyone who lets themselves get that heavy and has no desire to change will just drag others down with them. Bro, you actually watched the whole video. I'd give you a high five if I was a human. Make sure to click the like button and subscribe for more great content. See you next time.